The courtroom was quiet in that uncomfortable way where even breathing felt too loud. Wooden benches creaked softly as people shifted in their seats, and the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead. At the front of the room, the judge reviewed papers with a tired expression, unaware that everything was about to change. On the witness bench sat a little girl no older than 9. Her feet didn't reach the floor. Her hands were folded so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had turned white. She wore a pale blue dress, slightly wrinkled, and her dark hair was pulled back in a simple braid. From the outside, she looked calm. Too calm. Beside her, sitting perfectly still, was a large black dog. Most people assumed it was just a comfort animal, a quiet presence to help a nervous child through a difficult testimony. The court clerk had noted it without much thought. The defense attorney had even rolled his eyes when the dog entered, muttering something about theatrics. But the dog wasn't there for comfort. He was there for protection. The girl's name was Emily, and she hadn't spoken freely in months. The case was simple on paper. Custody dispute, allegations of neglect, no physical evidence strong enough to move quickly. Just a child's statement versus an adult's denial. The system had seen it 1,000 times before. Emily's father sat at the defense table, his posture relaxed, arms folded casually. He wore a clean suit and an expression carefully practiced in front of mirrors. Concerned, confused, wrongly accused, he had already told the court how much he loved his daughter. How misunderstood everything was, how emotional children could be. And until now, it had been working. Emily had barely spoken since being removed from his home. Therapists called it trauma-induced muteness. She answered questions with nods, shrugs, or silence. Her words, when they came, were whispered and fragmented. That was why the judge had allowed the dog. The dog's name was Shadow. Shadow had been trained as a service animal for children with severe trauma. Not just obedience, not just comfort, but detection, response, protection. He was trained to recognize physiological signs of panic, dissociation, and fear, especially fear triggered by specific individuals. Emily hadn't chosen Shadow. Shadow had chosen Emily. When the bailiff asked her to raise her right hand, Emily did so slowly. Shadow didn't move, but his eyes lifted instantly. Watching, measuring, ready. Do you promise to tell the truth? The clerk asked gently. Emily nodded. The judge leaned forward slightly. Emily, you can take your time. No one here will hurt you. Her father smiled at her from across the room. Soft, reassuring. The same smile that once made her stomach twist into knots. Emily swallowed. The prosecutor asked simple questions at first. Her age, her school, her favorite subject. Emily answered quietly. Shadow remained calm. Then the questions shifted. Emily, can you tell us why you don't want to go back to your father's house? The room felt like it stopped breathing. Emily's gaze dropped to the floor. Her hands clenched again. Her shoulders rose slightly, as if she were bracing for something invisible. Across the room, her father leaned forward just a little. Shadow's ears flattened. No one noticed, except the judge. Emily's breathing changed, shallow, uneven. I don't feel safe, she whispered. The defense attorney scoffed quietly. Your Honor. The judge raised a hand. Let her finish. Emily's eyes filled with tears. She shook her head, words getting stuck in her throat. That's okay, the prosecutor said softly. You can show us if it's easier. Emily hesitated. Then she did something no one expected. She lifted her hand slightly, and made a small, deliberate motion with her fingers. It wasn't random. It was a signal. Shadow reacted instantly. The dog stood up, stepping forward just half a pace, placing his body between Emily and the defense table. His posture was rigid, protective. His gaze locked directly onto Emily's father. A low, controlled growl vibrated through the courtroom. Gasps rippled through the benches. Control the dog, the defense attorney snapped. Shadow didn't move. Emily didn't flinch. Her father's smile vanished. The judge stood up. Everyone stay where they are, the judge said sharply. The bailiff moved closer, uncertain. Shadow's growl deepened. Not aggressive, but unmistakably defensive. His training was clear. Barrier positioning, threat fixation, escalation readiness. The judge's voice softened. Emily, is Shadow doing what you trained him to do? Emily nodded, tears spilling freely now. He protects me when I'm scared. Who are you scared of right now? The judge asked quietly. Emily didn't point. She didn't need to. Shadow took one more step forward. Directly in front of her father. The man pushed his chair back abruptly. This is ridiculous, he snapped. That dog is reacting to tension in the room. Shadow barked once, sharp, commanding. The sound echoed off the courtroom walls like a warning shot. The judge slammed the gavel. Enough. The room froze. Bailiff, separate the child and the defendant immediately. As the bailiff approached Emily's father, Shadow adjusted his stance, keeping Emily shielded without advancing further. His control was flawless. No lunging, no chaos, just unwavering focus. The judge turned to the court-appointed trauma specialist seated nearby. You've worked with this dog? Yes, Your Honor, she replied. Shadow is trained to respond to specific trauma triggers. He does not react without cause. The defense attorney protested. You're allowing an animal to influence testimony. The judge's eyes were hard now. No, I'm allowing evidence to speak. Emily's father was escorted to the far side of the room. As distance increased, Shadow slowly relaxed, sitting back down beside Emily, placing his head gently against her leg. Emily exhaled shakily. The judge knelt down to Emily's level. Emily, she said gently, did your father hurt you? Emily hesitated. Then she nodded. The courtroom erupted into murmurs. The judge raised a hand for silence. Emily, when you made that signal, what did it mean? Emily wiped her eyes. It means, I'm not safe. Shadow moves so I don't have to. A knot formed in the judge's throat. Who taught you that signal? Emily whispered, my therapist. She said if I couldn't talk, Shadow could help. The defense attorney's case collapsed in real time. Further testimony followed. Medical records, therapist notes, prior reports that had been dismissed. Patterns suddenly made sense. Shadow remained beside Emily the entire time. Calm, steady, a living shield. When the judge finally spoke, her voice carried authority and emotion. This court recognizes the testimony presented, both verbal and nonverbal, she said. And this court finds that returning this child to the defendant would pose a serious risk. The gavel struck. Custody was terminated immediately. As the room emptied, Emily stayed seated, leaning into Shadow's warm fur. Her small fingers tangled gently in his collar. You did very well, the judge told her softly before leaving. Emily looked up for the first time that day and smiled. Outside the courthouse, sunlight spilled across the steps. Emily walked beside her caseworker, Shadow trotting proudly at her side. For the first time in a long time, she felt safe. Because when her voice couldn't protect her, she had found another way to be heard. And when the little girl gave a signal no one expected, even a judge knew, everything had to stop.